What do I do if I don't have enough experience? What if I'm underqualified for a job? Well, first of all, you should have this mentality in mind when applying to jobs and apply to jobs that you feel you are underqualified for. If a job is asking you to do something that you already feel confident, then you should ask yourself, what am I going to learn in this job? Am I going to learn actually? Is this job going to put things on my resume that will make me get better and get a better position in the future? Or am I just going to do the same thing that I already know what to do or how to do it? Finally, you have to keep in mind that job postings are put in order to weed out the weak candidates. I have seen way too many of these created by non-technical people or just making jobs sound tougher than it really is to remove junior developers or engineers from applying. So ask yourself, is this job going to be tough? Good. Then that is what you want. That's what you should be doing. Do you feel confident you are very qualified for this job? Okay, then maybe you should push yourself and apply to a job that's more difficult than you think. Every application should be a long shot. If you're applying to something that you're 100% qualified for, where is your room to grow? So dream big. But in order to dream big, you might have a bit of a roadblock. What if you don't have enough experience? See, I don't love resumes and I don't think a lot of people do either. But sometimes without a resume, you cannot get an interview. And in order to have a good resume, you need to have something to put on it, like great experience. Here's the catch though. How can you have good experience if you're just getting started? It's like you have no hope if you're a beginner or if you don't have enough work experience because you're just out of school or you're changing careers. Well, not quite. As with everything, there's the regular way of doing things, then there's the smart way. You see, experience doesn't come just from working at another company. There are many ways that you can demonstrate experience without a past job. And here you'll find my favorite ways to show and prove you can get the job done. You won't have to do every single one of them, but 2 out of 4 of these, or even better, 3 out of 4, will be great at showcasing on your resume and make you stand out. So let's go in order and see how we can do this. The first one is GitHub. GitHub is a great way to demonstrate that you actually code, that you've built projects. The number one thing you can do is to start making commits and making sure that you have a good history of things that you've done. And by the way, if you're wondering how I got this cat picture in here, I'll show you a little trick in the next exercise to make your contribution look a little bit nicer and busier in case you're just getting started and you don't have a good past history. Another way to improve your GitHub profile or to just add more experience is contributing and participating in open source projects. For example, I've created a Zero to Mastery organization where we have a ton of open source projects by the community that you can contribute to. And they're made specifically for you to mess up, make mistakes. Nobody's going to yell at you. These are just fun projects that are open source that you can contribute to. And you can do as much or as little as you want, but this will improve your experience in contributing to open source projects, and it's something you can add to your resumes. Now, contributing to open source projects, recruiters love seeing this because this demonstrates that you can work with others and also with something like GitHub and version control. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one is website. If you're especially a full stack or a front-end developer or even a designer, you should have your own website where you can showcase your skills. This, again, is something you can speak about in your interview and about how you built the website, or it gives you a good way to talk about your past projects. Now, you're asking yourself, Andre, am I going to have to build a whole new website and waste a bunch of time? Well, not really. Let me show you a couple of tricks. You see, you don't need to build your own website from scratch. There's a ton of free templates like Creative Tim here that just gives you a nice template for you to use and fill in with your information. We can also look at this one. And again, free templates that you can use. I especially like the mountain template. And you can see that, yeah, I mean, you can customize this to your own and make it look professional. And it's already designed nicely and also customized for different experiences, such as mobile, tablet. And in a day, you can have your own website. And just to show you how you shouldn't really spend too much time on your own website, one of my favorite people to follow is Kevin Kelly. He is very, very popular among the tech community, and he's just a overall really smart thinker. And you can see his website over here. It's very simple. Nothing exaggerated, very, very clean but small, very basic layout. And this is to show you that you don't need some crazy animations, make it all flashy to stand out. As long as you have a personal website, it just shows that you actually spend time building it and doing something that most people wouldn't do. Another thing that I want to show you is, for example, the job board that we have for all of my students. And this is, again, another open source project that the community built. If we just search through, let's say, Toronto developers here, and we go to Christine Aki, I hope I'm saying the last name right, you can see how simple yet beautiful her portfolio is. If we go to About Me, just a nice little bio with links to her profile. If we go to projects, we see some of their projects. And this is something that she can put on her resume and immediately stand out from the crowd. And it also gives her an opportunity to list projects that she can talk about when she gets to an interview. All right, let's look at the next topic. 1 to 2 big projects. Now, you can't really fake experience. If you've never built anything beyond a to-do list or a Hello World app, you simply will not be able to get very good jobs. However, most people think having 100 projects is the way to go. So they do a project a day and build small projects, many small, tiny projects to have 30 of them. And they start building all these projects that are very, very simple. Now, that's not actually impressive. I mean, it shows that you're working hard and coding along. But if I'm a recruiter and you show me a project of maybe tic-tac-toe, well, I don't really care. That's something that anybody can build with a bit of coding experience in a day or two. Frankly, no recruiter or interviewer is going to check out all your 30 projects. Most of the time, we want to hear your most difficult or the hardest, biggest project you've worked on. Instead of spending your time on these small little projects, spend your time on 1 or 2 big projects. For example, in other courses that I teach, we built a face recognition app. And this app, well, it has a front end using React.js, a back end where we have a RESTful API server with Express. We've deployed it to Heroku. We've created session management with authenticated routes. We store user information such as username and also hashed passwords securely in our database on Postgres. We've deployed our app with Docker, and we've also used Redis for session management and caching. Now, all of that may not mean a lot to you, but having something like a one big project that you can talk about all these things will make you sound a lot more impressive than somebody that just builds a ton of tiny projects. So focus on that. Have 1 to 2 big projects that you can show off, makes you stand out, and it's also going to give you something to talk about during the interview. And put it up on your website or create its own website, and you immediately can put this as the first item on your resume. Because here's the thing. If you don't have work experience, if we go back to the resume we used in the exercise, remember this resume? Well, if you had no work experience, maybe for work experience, you can say something like JavaScript developer or web application developer and talk about how you build your project here. Because to a recruiter, it doesn't really matter if you worked at a certain company building an application or on your own. Or that could be a little bit vague too. They don't need to know that. They just need to know that you built things that are real, that are big and complicated, and you solved hard problems. So having one or two big projects that you can list on your experiences is a great way to add to your resume if you don't have enough past work experience at companies. And I have a few students who have actually used this technique to get interviews, even though they just learned how to code 6 months ago. And then finally, we have the blog post or blog. Let's have a look at what I mean by that. This is another thing you can include in your resume, especially if it's related to a technology you're using or the company is using. For example, I have here my Medium profile, and Medium.com allows anybody around the world to just post a blog post. And it's very popular with the tech community, so there's a lot of tech-related posts that you can write on Medium. And there's other platforms like this. What if you wrote a blog post about a specific technology that the company you're applying for is using, or some sort of a technical problem that they're facing? By doing that and just adding a link to that blog post, it gives you, again, another leg up to most people. And the great thing about platforms like this is that, well, if we go to one of my articles here, you can post it to what we call publishers. And publishers allow your post to be discovered by others. And it's very simple to do. You can write a blog post on Medium in a day and submit it to a place like Hacker Noon, and lots of people see it. And as soon as you show this to a recruiter or an interviewer, again, it automatically shows that you know what you're talking about, or at least it makes you stand out from the rest. And you can do this with YouTube videos as well, but I prefer writing because it's a lot faster and it looks a lot more professional. So let's just review here. What happens if you don't have enough experience? Well, all of these 4 points allow you to gain that experience or show that you have experience without actually having traditional work experience. All you need to do is start something on your own and build something like a project or a portfolio or a blog post. This only shows initiative, but you can focus this project on solely getting your interviews, or you can participate in a hackathon or contribute to open source projects. By taking this initiative, you're doing more than most people that hope to just land an interview by sending a generic resume. You'll immediately stand out from the crowd and give you something to put on your resume that, again, is different than the average developer. Plus, you have the added benefit of something to talk about in your actual interview. Remember, nothing is given to you for free. And luck is for those who rather wait than go after what they want. So by simply building something just for fun, such as a side project, you're showing how self-motivated and ambitious you are. Experience doesn't mean on-the-job experience. Write about your portfolio projects. Maybe talk about your website and how you built it. Talk about your GitHub profile, maybe a hackathon you participated in, or open source projects you've worked on. Write a blog post on a specific technology that the company you're applying to is using. All of them answer this question: do you have experience? Finally, there are many things that you can add that are not developer related, but can make you a great employee. For example, did you work as an instructor at a camp? Well, you can now add ability to manage people and communicate well with others. Any skill that is related to getting the job done can be included. Also, if you have only had 6 months of coding experience, don't show that on the resume. That doesn't mean to lie, but to hide that information. Because a recruiter only glances at your resume. They won't care if you're the best developer in the world if they just see 6 months experience. That's too risky for them. Your resume will most likely be discarded no matter how good of a developer you are. So remember, resumes are only good to get your foot in the door. By tweaking your resume to show that you have experience so that the recruiters thinks, oh, interviewing this person is low risk because they know what they're talking about, is a good way of doing it. Do you have past experience? Have you made good decisions in the past? And have you worked on a challenging problem and solved them? If you're able to answer yes to that, well then, a recruiter is most likely going to ask you for an interview. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. The most successful people that I know, and I'm not just talking about developers, I'm talking about all the successful people that I know, are masters of learning. We all have the same amount of time in the day, 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 26 seconds. However, some people are able to accomplish more than others. Why is that? I'm a big proponent of efficiency. If you're able to learn something in much less time than somebody else, then you can compound the benefit over your lifetime. Now, I know many people have different learning abilities, but this isn't a contest with others. This is a contest within yourself. Figure out what makes you successful in learning. Don't compare yourself to others. Whether you're a visual learner or maybe you need to take breaks every 30 minutes, figure out what your best learning style is. Learn how to learn. Don't just watch videos blindly at 2 times the speed and expect to learn everything. Find the most efficient way that works for you and keep practicing. By learning to learn, you become a better developer. As developers, we have to constantly learn throughout our career. Our learning never stops because technology is constantly evolving. So if you want to be a successful developer, you have to learn your best learning style. It is better to figure out what makes you tick, what makes things clearer for you now than later on in your career. Start early, figure out what is the best method for you, because it's going to be a skill that you're going to use throughout your career. This is something that we started our course with. The idea that when learning something with our limited time and resource, we need to make sure that we understand the most important concept. Why are we learning this? Why is this worth my time? And why is this something that I should dedicate this time to? Too often we see new things in the developer ecosystem. It is always exciting to be working on the newest and shiniest thing that everybody is talking about. But remember, those libraries and frameworks and configuration files and tools, those things come and go. They're always changing. You can be a master of Webpack one day, and 2 years later, nobody cares because there's a better tool out there. The things that stick around are the fundamental computer science topics and software development practices. Sure, these things change over time as well, but they always evolve slowly with why in mind. When learning new things, make sure you understand why the solution was created. What problem is it solving? And why is this the answer to your problems? If you're able to do this, you stop being a player in the game of catch-up in the developer ecosystem, always trying to learn the latest library, the newest tool, the coolest functions to learn. It's like a game of hamster who's constantly trying to keep up with the wheel, trying to run on that wheel. But instead, be an observer who is watching the ecosystem evolve from above. Watch how new libraries come and go. Understand the why of each library, what problems they solve. Understand the big picture, why we do things. But be the observer, not the hamster. You'll have a happier, longer career overall. Trust me. You won't be constantly trying to catch up with every library and framework this way. This big picture vision is what makes a senior developer or a manager or a leader. They don't have narrow vision. They see the entire ecosystem and they are able to make smart decisions because of that. So always start with why. In this video, we're going to talk about Git and GitHub and source control. Now you might remember GitHub from our previous section where we used it to put the website online. But I'll show you that it is so much more than that. More importantly, Git and GitHub is used by most professional companies, and it is a skill that is expected to be known by all developers now. So this is an important section. One of the first things most developers have to do on their first day at the job is to submit something called a pull request, which uses Git and GitHub. We'll get through that in this section. Don't worry. You're going to learn all of this and it's going to make sense. Let's first start with source control. Up until now, we have only worked on small files. No team members, just ourselves, just a couple of files. But in real life, you're most likely not the only developer on a team. Most likely the projects are huge. There's many, many files. Source control allows us to make sure that multiple people can work on the same file from different locations. Think of it as Google Docs that allows people to collaborate on one document. But enough talk, let's actually check it out. I have over here set up 2 folders. One is for myself, Andre, who just started a new job at X company. And I have Marcy here, who has been working at the company for a while, and she has project files over here. I'm actually using the files from our background generator video. Now, without Git or GitHub, what I can do is just copy and paste these files. So I have whatever Marcy has, and we can start working on these files. I can have my developer environment here with my terminal and my Sublime text, and I can work on whatever changes that need to be made on the app. And Marcy over here also has her own version where she can work on it. And we're both working on the same project. But let's say that both Marcy and I are working on this project and she decides to change the project name from gradient background to super background. And at the same time, in my project, I decide to call this cool background. Well, now you'll have to set up a meeting between myself and Marcy and decide how we should change the code. And this is a small example, but you can imagine that as different programmers work together, there's always going to be this issue of one person changing one thing and another person changing another thing. This is where source control came in. And source control is a way to control this where we have one place instead of our own computers. In this case, is just represented by the folder that I have in here. Instead of each of us having a copy of the project, with source control, we have a copy of the project, but there is a centralized location up somewhere, maybe owned by the company or somewhere on the internet, that has the ultimate version that we each talk to make sure that we each have the same version. Git and GitHub is a way to do this, to be able to use source control. And as a matter of fact, it's the de facto way of doing this. So like I said before, this is most likely the tool you'll be using every single day at your workplace. So if I go to the GitHub website here, what it allows us to do is it's a place, a central place that both Andre and Marcy can talk to. So even though we work on the same files, the same project, I can ask this central location, such as GitHub, hey, has Marcy made any changes? And Marcy can ask, hey, has Andre made any changes? And every once in a while, you'll get something like this where we have cool background and super background where we have something called a merge conflict. What GitHub allows us to do is say, hey, I noticed there is a merge conflict. I see that you guys have both changed your background. I don't know who's right, but here's the information. Andre and Marcy, can you guys talk amongst yourself and figure it out? That's pretty much the workflow. So let's actually see what this looks like. The first thing we want to do is set up a GitHub account. If you haven't done it in the previous exercises, you absolutely should start a GitHub account. It's free. And like I said before, if you're a developer, you just need to have it. It's where Everybody puts their projects. It's where you work. You'll be spending a lot of time on this website. You might remember that when we had the GitHub project, I also told you to get GitHub for desktop. Although we used that to make things simpler during that video, this is actually not the recommended way of doing it. It allows you to visually see and interact with GitHub, but it's kind of looked down upon by employers, and most people use the terminal or the command prompt to actually do this. So I won't be teaching you this way just because I think it's bad practice and getting used to the terminal is important. I'm going to close that and we're going to get this started. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on Start a Project. And here we're going to call it whatever we want. We'll call it Background Generator. And you also want to leave it as public, and we want to click on Initialize this with a README. And we'll click Create Repository. And what that does, well, we've created a new project on GitHub. And here, the README, which is just a file that describes your project, you can see that it's here. We can type into the README whatever we want and it'll describe our project. But let's go back. If Marcy, let's say Marcy has been working at this company for a long time. I'm actually going to remove my files here. Marcy has been working at this company for a long time. And the employer finally decided, hey, we need to use GitHub. We're going to hire this new guy, Andre. We want to make sure that you both can work on it, on the project together without any issues. Can you put the project up on GitHub? So what Marcy will do is she will go to GitHub, create background generator, and then she's going to click right over here to clone or download. And she's going to make sure it says use HTTPS. And from here, you just click on this button, which copies this link to your keyboard. Then Marcy goes to her terminal. And right now we're in Documents. We want to have the project in the Marcy folder. So I'll cd into Marcy. If I click ls, I see that, yep, I have my files. Now, the first command that we're going to learn is called git clone, and then copy and paste what we copied from the website. We're just saying, hey, clone this project from github.com. So I press enter, and there you go. Everything is downloaded. If I go back to the folder now, I see that I have background generator. If I double click this, you'll see that I have a .git folder here that's actually hidden. You might not even see it on your laptop if you don't have this feature on your computer enabled. But this .git now allows me to communicate with GitHub. So what we can do now, Marcy can copy and paste these files and put it into background generator. Now let me show you the next git command. Marcy right now, if we see, she's in her folder, but now we need to go into background generator, because if we do any git commands here, well, it won't work because it's not a Git project. We need to actually go inside of the project that was created on GitHub. So I'm going to cd into that directory. Notice here, I have my terminal set so that it actually shows me what GitHub location I'm in, and I'll explain what master means later. Now that we're here, we can look at all our files. Yep, I see that now I have my README, which I created on GitHub, plus the files that I copy and pasted. We need to sync this so that if I go into my background generator, instead of the README files, Marcy can put up her files on GitHub. The way we do that is our second command, git status. It tells us that we have untracked files. That is, we have index.html, script.js, and style that are untracked. And it says use git add file to include what will be committed. So now that we see our status of what we have in our folder, we can say git add and the file name. So I can do index.html, git add script.js, and git add style.css. Let's clear this so we can see it. And now I can do git status again, just to see what our status is. And now I have your branch is up to date, changes to be committed. You see that now with add, we've said, hey, we want to add these changes. We have new files that we've added and says to be committed. So the second step is to do something called git commit. And git commit says, hey, I'm committing that these are the changes that I want to make to GitHub. And it allows you to pass a message so that on GitHub, it'll show the message. When Andre comes back in, he can say, oh, Marcy added these files and this is the message. And we do that by doing this. And within here, within the double quotes, I can say adding, starting project. Close the bracket, press enter. I'm going to clear this. Now there's one last step. We did git add to add our changes, then git commit to commit and say, yeah, we're locking in those changes. And then finally, we need to let github.com know that these are the changes. So we do git push. And there you go. It has now been pushed to this repository. So if I go back and I refresh, look at that. It's the same thing that we did when we put up our first website online, but instead of using the desktop version of GitHub, we use the command line. And now we have our project, which is very good. Now let's go back to our example. So Marcy has been working on this project. There's a Git repository, and I just joined the company, and now I need to start working on this. What do I do? Now I need to access GitHub and get the copy of background generator. The way I do that, well, I go into my folder and I do the same thing. I do git clone, and then I copy and paste the repository just like before. Git clone and clone the repo. And there you go. If I go back to my folder, look at that. I have background generator. So we're both working now on background generator, but not off of each other's files. We're working with whatever version is on GitHub. All right, so now more realistic. We go back to working, and on the first day of my job, I say, I'm going to change the gradient background title, actually the H1 tag, to cool generator. If I save this and I do git status, oh, well, I'm not in a Git repository right now. If you remember, I have to go into background generator. Let me open that up a bit so you can see. There you go. Again, these Git commands won't work if you're not in a folder that has the .git folder. So let me do that. CD into background generator. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to say git status. And look at that. It tells me that I've modified index.html file. And if we remember, I will say git add. I only have one file. I can do index.html. But if I had multiple files and I want to just commit all of them at once, I can just do the period. So I'll do that, and then git commit, and I'll add a message changing title. I press enter. I'm going to clear this. Okay, and again, I do git push, and it looks like everything went through. So let's open that up and check it out. I now refresh here, and well, we haven't seen any changes, but we now see that we have 3 commits. We have the initial commit, the adding background project that Marcy did, and it shows you all the files that were added. And if I go back, I have the changing title commit. And now I see that, yeah, Andre just changed the background generator, which is in red, to cool generator. So as you can see, we have a history of all the changes, and we can always go back if there's any mistakes. But there's one issue right now. If I go back to the code and I go to Marcy's computer, I see that, well, she still has background generator here. Why is that? Well, because her computer doesn't know that GitHub has been updated. The next command I'm going to show you, this is the last one I'm going to show you in this video, is git pull. So remember, git push to push the changes to github.com, and git pull to pull whatever's the latest. So I do git pull, and there you go. You see over here that it shows me that index.html file was changed. Now you see that my title has been changed to cool generator. Let's just say that Marcy saw my first change and she really likes how I've added cool generator, but I think she wants to make it capitalized. Again, she's going to save that. She's going to say git status. All right, I have my index.html file, git add, then git commit, and I'll add the message capitalize title, and then git push. There you go. Again, I go back, I refresh, and now there's 4 commits, and we see that capitalized title is the new changes. The first day of work is done. I come into the next day of work, and well, I want to start with whatever the latest project is of background generator. And let's say Marcy worked all night to change that title to cool capitalized. I want to make sure that I have the most updated version. So what I do is when I get into work in the morning, I'll say, well, I want to make sure that if there's any changes that Marcy made, I know about them. So I'm going to say git pull, and notice here how the title's going to change after I do the pull. And now I click to Sublime Text, and there you go, cool generator. All right, in the next video, we're going to expand on this and show you what happens if both Marcy and Andre make the same changes. What does GitHub do? I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye. Welcome back. Let's continue from our previous video to talk about a more advanced workflow in Git and GitHub. Now, up to this point, both Marcy and I have just been working on, over here, branch master. What does that mean? Well, it says branches, but I only see master here. And you might have noticed one issue with the way that we were doing things. That is, if it's my first day on the job and I just changed the title, but maybe we didn't even want that change. Maybe that breaks our branding or breaks our app. But I was able to do it so easily to change it into master. Maybe Marcy didn't even know that I've added that change. And that's a big problem, right? You don't want to put things into what we call production, into what the user sees, if it's going to break our website. If you're a big company like Facebook, that could mean millions of dollars in lost revenue, even if you have a bug that lasts a few hours. So I'm going to show you a more realistic workflow that you'll have, and that is with branching. Let me show you what I mean. I have over here a visual of what Git is really good at. Up until now, we've been working on what we call master. That is the master branch. Think of the master branch as the authority. This is the right way that our app or our website should look. And up until now, when I added the cool background title, well, I went from background generator to cool generator. And then when Marcy changed it to capitalized letters, then we went to here. And we just went in a linear fashion from one end to the other, to the other, to the other. But like I said, that is a bit of a problem. So a better thing to do is what we call branching. If I wanted to change the title, I will create a branch and just call it little feature, for example. And I just work on that branch on my own without affecting the master branch, what the user sees. And only when it's finished, when Marcy has reviewed it, when we have tested it and everybody on the team's okay, then we bring it back into master. And you can see over here with the big feature, you can keep going for a long time on your own branch. And only when you're done, do what we call merge into master. I'm going to show you how that works today. I'm going to close this and remember our example. We have Marcy's computer here with all the files, and we have my computer here with all the files. We both have our workstation set up. And now you see what master in my terminal means. And I'll show you in the notes afterwards how you can have this set up so it tells you what branch you're on. But we can see that we're both on master. That's my computer. And Marcy's computer is also on master. We want to make sure that we're both up to date with the latest GitHub. So Marcy's going to do git pull, and I'm also going to do git pull. And let's say that I'm now working on a new feature. And because it's a better workflow not to work on master, and this is a good tip generally, don't work on master, always branch off. If I do git branch, it'll show me that, well, I only have one branch, and that is master. But we can add to it. We can say git branch new or little feature. And now if I do git branch, I see that I have little feature, but master is highlighted because I'm currently on master. So the way I would go to the little feature branch, I'll say git checkout little feature. And there you go, switch to branch little feature. And now I'm on little feature branch. So what I've done is I've branched off of master and now created little feature. Let's create a bit of a change. I'm going to say in the little feature, we're going to change the current CSS background title to say, this is the background. I'm going to save here. And again, I do my simple workflow that we did in the last video. Git status. I see that, yep, we have the index.html change. Going to clear so we can see. So now that we've made this change, let's do git add. And again, just git status to make sure everything went through. Yeah, we're ready to commit index.html. So we'll do git commit. Message will be changing text. Perfect. Let's clear that. And now, again, in order to let GitHub know of the changes, we need to do git push. So we'll do git push. All right. Let's go to GitHub and see what happened. We see that now we have this yellow bar that just showed up and says you recently pushed branches. So if I click on this green button here, compare pull request, it shows me what changes I have, which is I've changed the title. And here I can let Marcy know, saying, Marcy, I've changed the text. What do you think? And I click on create pull request. And now I have my PR. And you see here how it says merge pull request. Well, if we go back to our diagram, I've created this little feature. And now I'm saying, hey, Marcy, I've just done this new change. What do you think? Is it okay for me to merge it into master? And what will happen here most likely is Marcy will come, see this pull request. You can see that we're on the pull request tabs. So she'll be able to see them and seeing, oh, Andre just did this change. She'll look through the changes and she'll say, well, if she likes this, she could be like, looks good. She can click on start a review. And you know what? She likes this, so she's just going to approve. Now, Marcy or myself, usually you don't want to merge your own pull request. Somebody on the team does it. Can now just say merge pull request. Confirm merge. And there you go. Some teams like deleting the branch afterwards, so you can just click delete here. If I go back to the code, well, I don't have the branches anymore because I just deleted it. But in my master, if I go to index.html, I see this is the background. So now Marcy can go to her project and say git pull. And again, she has the latest update. Now let's talk about some conflicts that can arise. Now let's say Marcy wants to change something, and I also change the same thing, and we get a merge conflict. Let's see what happens. So let's say Marcy wants to create a new feature saying, we'll call this one big feature. And she'll say git checkout or git branch big feature. She'll say git checkout big feature. And if I do git branch, we see that, yep, there's a new branch here. Let's clear that. And she'll say here that she wants to change this back to background color or background generator because all the users are complaining that the title changed and they like the old title. So she's changed that. She has done the git add, git commit, reverting back to old title. Perfect. And then she's going to do git push. Oh, let's clear that first, actually. And we do git push. The first time you get this, you might get this error saying that there's no upstream. You just copy the code that they give you here. Perfect. Now if I go back to background generator, I see the big feature pull request over here. And just to show you that you can have multiple commits, let's say Marcy decides to, oh, this is me. Marcy decides to add an exclamation point here. She can just say again, she saves this. That's clear. She'll say git add, git commit. You do this a lot, so you'll get really, really good at Git after working at a company for a while. And she'll say added exclamation. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do. Git commit. Commit. Added exclamation. And she'll do git push again. And let's go back to GitHub. If we look at the pull request, it'll actually have both of these, reverting back to old title and added exclamation. And we see over here both of the changes. Create the pull request, needs changes, Andre. So while this pull request is out there, I decided to start a new branch called, let's just call it conflict for now. And I'll do git checkout conflict. And now in the conflict branch, I decide to change this to just completely remove the cool generator. I save that. Again, I check my status and index.html file has been changed. So while this is happening, I get Marcy to merge the pull request. So she's entered it into master. Her pull request is in. And now if I go back to my conflict and I do git status, and we have to add these. So git add, then git commit. I'll just do a short message here, just check. And now, if I go back to master, oh, I have to do git checkout master. Again, before I push my changes, I want to make sure that I have the latest version of master, so I'm not changing anything, or I won't have any conflicts. So I'll do git pull to get the latest. And now I go to git checkout conflict branch. And I can do this command, git merge master. So I'm saying merge whatever is in master into conflict. Marcy has been working on the big feature and she's merged it. So now master has the big feature branch. But I've also created another branch and I've been working on my own on the conflict branch. And the conflict branch doesn't know anything about master. So I'm saying, hey, whatever's in master right now, which includes the big feature that Marcy worked on, pull it in and make sure that there's no conflicts. So I do that. And I get conflict, merge conflict in index.html file. Now, if I actually click on Sublime Text, let me open this up so you can see it better. Oh boy, I get this weird little syntax. It's overwhelming at first, but it's easy to see what's happening. Head is where my branch is at, and it shows me that here to the end, I don't have the H1 anymore, but in the master branch, we have background generator. Now I can talk to Marcy and say, hey, Marcy, do you want to keep the background generator title? And she'll say, yes, that was the right thing to do. Don't change the background. Well, in that case, I just remove these lines and remove this and save now. If I do git status now, okay, we have the modified status here. Let me just make this smaller again so you can see. So let me clear this. What we do now is we have to do git add, again, because we made those changes. And we have to do git commit, fixing merge issue. And I forgot the M. Let's try that again. M, conflict, fixing, merge issue. Let's clear here and do git status. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. And if I do git push, well, again, I get this error, but I want to show you this time around. If I do git push origin conflict, it now works. Let's go back to GitHub. See what sort of things we have. We have the conflict branch. And if we look at the conflict branch now, well, there's nothing changed because, well, I just reverted all my changes. So it's completely empty. There's no changes now. So Marcy will be like, hey, did you mean to make this PR? It's empty. So I'll see this message on my PR and I can keep going. And that's pretty much the workflow that you'll see in Git. I'll leave the commands for you after this, but you see it's very, very nice to work with. You learn a few commands, and as long as you have this visual model of every time you're working on something, you always create a branch, you title it with whatever feature you're working on, and every once in a while, you want to pull master and merge master into your branch to make sure that you're not missing out on any updates that other developers or teammates have done. Once you're done with your feature, you make a pull request by doing git push, and that pull request, you'll add comments and people will review your file changes. And if they want you to make a few changes, then you can do again git add, git commit, finally make your changes, and then you can merge pull request. And once that's done, then everybody else on the team, there's now a new master, so everybody else on the team should do git pull as well. It does take a bit of time to get used to, but is a really, really nice workflow to make sure that everybody on the team works on the same files, same projects, without causing any errors and making sure that everybody collaborates well. And that's it. Hope you found this useful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. In this video, we're going to talk about how to contribute to open source and actually take you through the steps. But first, for those who don't know, what is open source? Well, a lot of technology that has been created on the internet that we know today has been built on top of open source projects. And open source projects means that anybody can view the code. Anybody can see the code of a program, can inspect it, can modify it, can enhance it. In this way, the idea is that by sharing this information with everybody, we get everybody's input and we use the collective mind to improve software. Not only that, but it also benefits everybody, right? For example, the most famous example of an open source project is Linux, an operating system just like Windows or Mac OS, except it's built by everyday programmers. And it's code that is completely open sourced. Anybody can inspect the code, add on to it, and it's become so successful that most of the cloud that we know of, the servers usually run Linux. AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, all of them use Linux. Some of you might be running Linux right now as you watch this video. So not only do you get to work with other developers from around the world, where you can build great projects by just working in teams, by learning how open source works, well, you don't have to create something as big as Linux. You can create a project with a friend, something very small and simple. It doesn't really matter. The idea is of collaboration, of openness and sharing code to hopefully improve on the collective knowledge. Finally, a lot of employers actually look upon open source contribution as a plus. So if you're able to put in your resume that you're an open source contributor, well, that's a good sign. Plus, it teaches you valuable skills using Git and GitHub to work in teams. If you're looking for job experience but you don't have a job, contributing to open source is the perfect way for you to learn how to work in teams and mimic a work-like scenario. This is a really important video and something I'm really excited about. So let's show you how to make your first open source contribution. Improve your resume, learn some real-life skills, and have fun along the way. Now, we've actually created some open source projects for you for this course. We have the Zero to Mastery repository here, where we can see that we have about 64 projects open right now with about 2,000 contributors. That's a lot of people, and this number is bound to increase. Now, this place was created as a practice ground for you, a playground. Nobody will yell at you if you break things. You can contribute, add silly things, whatever you want. It's a testing ground. The idea is to have as much fun as possible and make it as easy as possible to contribute to open source. Now, within that organization, we have a great community of administrator or management team that will help you with these open source projects. By the way, who are these administrators? They're right here. Ignore my name. I help out as well, but they do a lot of the heavy lifting. And they are past students, just like you, that have had a bit of experience now. Most of them are working full-time, but they are now helping out the community by helping with our open source projects, our Discord, and generally just helping our community grow. So shout out to them. If you get a chance, say hi to them on Discord. They definitely do a lot for this community. They're very active on Discord and they really help maintain all of our open source projects. So let's learn how to make our very first open source contribution. I do want to note here that this isn't the only way for you to contribute to open source. This is just a playground that we've created for you. But once you contribute here, you can go off and contribute to all the other open source projects all over GitHub they can find. You can contribute to projects like React and Angular. The world is your oyster. Or you can just stick to these, as we actually have a ton of projects here that are fun. We have events going on like Hacktoberfest. Well, we'll get to that shortly. We definitely have a great community of developers and we can create some awesome projects together. Now, the way you want to get started is to first go to the Start Here guidelines. Now, in the Start Here guidelines, and I'll link to this page, you actually have a 4-step guide to get started. The first thing you want to do is to actually watch the Get Started guideline. a fellow student actually created this guide for you to follow the steps that I'll mention in this video. So you always have this as a reference. So after this video, definitely check out this document as a reference. But otherwise, once you've browsed through the document, make your first pull request. So if you've already watched my Git and GitHub videos, you should be all set. Otherwise, hopefully you're familiar with Git and GitHub. Now, the first thing we want to do is to actually add our names to the contributors.md file in this project. So if you go up, you'll see that we have a contributors.md, which stands for Markdown file. And if I click on here, you see that all the contributors that we have over 1,000 contributors. And if you scroll down, these are all their GitHub names. So your first task is to actually add your name to this list. So how can we do this? Well, we can just clone this repository, but a more recommended way of usually contributing to open source is to fork the project. Fork essentially means copy over the entire project and put it on your own GitHub profile. So if I click fork here, and we see over here that you can select where you want to fork the project and you want to select your profile. So once we fork this project, we make a copy of it. It's like we own this repository now with our own version of the Start Here guidelines. So once we have this, we can clone this repository using SSH or HTTPS, whatever you prefer. In my case, I'll use SSH so that I don't have to use my password every time. I can now say git clone and clone this repository. Now we can cd into Start Here guidelines, and we can open this up in our favorite text editor. Now, once here, let's clear this. We have the contributors file, which we need to add our name to. Now you can see here the contributors file is getting quite long because, well, we've got a lot of students who are contributing to open source. But at the very end, make sure you're at the very end here, you want to add your own name. Now here's the thing. Right now we're on the master branch, but I'm going to show you what a good practice is. We have our forked project, and we want to create a new branch to work off of instead of master by saying git checkout -b to create a new branch. And we want to name this branch. In our case, let's just name it test. If I hit enter, you'll see that now I'm on a new branch called test. And in this branch, I can add my name to this contributor list. In your case, you'll want to use your own GitHub profile. So we're using Markdown here, which is a syntax to write and have some functionality. For example, if we go to the contributors list, you'll notice that they are all clickable links. So we essentially use the same notation. We do a dash, square brackets with your GitHub username, and then in the parentheses, we just have the actual URL that you want to link to. In our case, the GitHub username that you have. So your GitHub username here, GitHub username here. Once we do that, we can save this file and now go back to our terminal and say git status. And we see here that, yeah, we just modified our contributors.md file. And if I do git diff to see any changes that we've made, we see that we've added this new line. So let's clear this. We have our name all set up, and we can now add this commit by saying git add and dot for everything. We'll add everything, and then git commit, and we'll write a message that says added my name to contributor list. There we go. So now it's time for us to push these changes. Now, if I do git push origin master, well, right now, what that would mean is that we want to push to origin, and the origin is this Start Here guideline, which I forked. So the origin is actually my version of the project. And if I want to push to master, that is the main branch. But we don't want to do that because ideally, we want to be able to also change and add our name to the original Zero to Mastery Start Here guideline because this is the main project. So what we can do is instead of master, push to our test branch. So we say git push origin test. There we go. Now, if I go back here and go to my project and I refresh, I now have two branches, the master branch and also the test branch, which I just updated. So one way to do this is to click on new pull request. And you can add comments here like I've added my name to the list, and you can tag some of our maintainers. In my case, I'll just tag myself. If I do create pull request, I now have my pull request. And notice here how my pull request is now at the Zero to Mastery Start Here guideline. So that if I go back to our Start Here guideline, I see that I'm part of the pull request now, right here. And because I've tagged one of the management teams, so in this case, it was myself, or you can tag any of the management team that we have. Now, in this case, I'm cheating because I also help manage this. So I can just myself merge the pull request. Most likely in your case, you won't be able to merge it yourself. But if I click merge and confirm, there we go. I've merged my project. I've deleted the branch and the pull request is closed. If I want, I can even delete my own fork. But for now, let's keep it the way it is. Let's check the Start Here guidelines and see if my name has been added to the list. If I scroll all the way down, hey, check that out. There's my name on the list. So I've been added to the contributors list. That was pretty easy, right? And the cool part is that now if I go to my profile, I actually have Zero to Mastery as one of my organizations. So if you're able to add yourself to the contributors list, you can actually join the Zero to Mastery organization and have this little icon appear on your GitHub profile. And lots of GitHub profiles have organizations, so people usually have their workplace icon in here. So it's just a nice little thing to have on your profile to show that you're involved in the programming community. So we've just made a pull request, which was step 2, and that was pretty fast, right? Finally, the next step is to go join an actual project and start contributing the way we just learned in our Zero to Mastery organization. Now, there's actually a guide that we provided for you to figure out what project you choose, what's going to be good for you. We also have in our Discord a group projects section where we can look at some of the current projects that are happening, or you can just go to the Zero to Mastery organization and pick any of the repositories to contribute to. Now, in the next video, we're going to contribute to one of these projects and show you a real-life scenario. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye. Welcome back. We've just done our first contribution, which wasn't that crazy, right? We just went to the Start Here guideline and added our names to the contributors list. But let's actually contribute to an open source project now. Now, in our community, every month we do coding challenges. Now, you can search for coding challenges here, but this month is a special event because we're actually doing a Hacktoberfest event. And this happens once a year in our community in October. And you can see that if we click on the Hacktoberfest 2019 link, So depending on when you watch this, you might have a different year. You see that we've provided for you an opportunity to contribute to an open source project. We actually have Animation Nation. We have a Sanctified project, and also a Python project. And you can contribute to any one of these. So if we look at Animation Nation, well, people have contributed their CSS animations here. Ooh, this one looks nice. We also have the Sanctified project. So people have created a little Santa website. That's kind of nice. Very, very cool. And then we also have the Python art project that actually does something really cool. If I go to the website here, it'll actually turn an image into ASCII art, which is really, really cool. Now, there's tons of projects that you can do, but let's try and do this Animation Nation project. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the project repository and follow the steps that we've done before. That is, we fork the repository. We now clone this repository. Let's git clone. And while that is being cloned, let's look at the instructions. Now, most open source projects will have instructions on how you can contribute. In our case, we have a nice step-by-step guide. So in the art directory, create a directory name after yourself. Okay, that's nice and easy to do. So let's cd into the Animation Nation project. Let's open it up in Sublime. And we see that there's an art folder. And in here, we have to create our own name or our own folder with our name. I've actually already created a folder called Animatron that has a little CSS project with index.html and CSS. So just to show you, let's move this. Or just to show you, this is my little animation using some simple index.html and CSS. Nothing too crazy. Now, all we need to do is move this into the art folder as the instructions have given us. And now we've added our project. Let's see, where's Animatron? There it is. That's my project over there. Next is to, well, within this folder, make sure we create two files, an HTML file and a CSS file, and link the CSS file to your HTML. Using only HTML and CSS, create a work of art. So I've actually already done that. Again, if we go back to the project, I have an index.html file, very, very simple, that's linked to a style sheet. And this is my styles that I've added for my animation that has these little lines. Now, the last part here is to add my own card to this section, to the include.js file. So let's just copy this, go to the includes or include.js, and you see this is where everybody enters their information. And right here, we can just add what we copy and pasted. Make sure the indentation is proper. So the art name is going to be called Animatron. Page link is going to be, well, the name of our folder. So Animatron index.html. And then the GIF name, which they suggested that we include a GIF. So if I remember correctly, the GIF name was trans.gif. Again, I just created a little GIF of my animation. So we'll call it trans.gif. Author is Andre. And the GitHub link is my GitHub link. All right, so that should be good. Let's now make a pull request. Now, notice here how I did all these changes on master. Ideally, we created these changes on a new branch. So we can actually just do that now. Git checkout B and call it animatron. So if I do git status now, I see that I have 2 changes. That's good. Let's do git add, git commit, adding my artsiness to the project. And then finally, git push origin animatron. All right, if we go back to the project, we see that we actually now have a little icon that says compare pull request. If I go back to the forked repo, 0 to mastery, you see right over here that I also have this yellow banner. So if I click on this and say, please add me to this list, and we'll link to, this is Joy, who's one of the managers. So I'm just going to say, please add me to the list. We actually don't even need to tag her because she will check this occasionally. So I'm going to create a pull request. It's now opened. That's awesome. So please add me to the list. If I look at my file changes, you can see that these are what I've added to the project. So if I now merge pull request, again, you won't be able to do this, but some of our management team, people who are managing the open source projects, will be able to merge for you. We can delete the branch since we have merged everything. And now let's see if the changes have been made. If I go to the 0 to mastery animation nation, so if I now look for my project, hey, look at that. There's my little animatron project that, well, there it is. There's my CSS. That's beautiful. Now, the way this project is designed, it randomly selects the CSS animation. So it might not show all of them at the same time. So you might have to refresh this a few times. But just like that, I made my open source contribution. Now, there's a ton of projects here that you can join. And like I said, this is a playground for you to test, make mistakes, because this isn't a real workplace. We want to practice these skills before we actually go into work and make big, dangerous changes. And that's open source. I highly, highly recommend that you get involved. It's a great way to work with others. It's a great way to learn how Git and GitHub really work. There's no doubt that there's a lot that an individual programmer can do. However, the progress and scale that something can be built is really compounded when many people work on something together. Go make your first open source contribution and have fun building things with your fellow programmers. It may one day lead you to impress a potential employer. See you in the next one.